so I just got off a 2-hour flight on that plane. We're here in the middle of nowhere. It's the most middle of nowhere I've ever been.
This is the Yanjibanan project in Western Australia, about 250 kilometers from the nearest town. That's like the distance between Singapore and Malacca. But water, electricity, and Wi-Fi have sprung up here for one purpose. It's for all the workers, scientists, and engineers who would move out here into the desert to work on extracting something the West really wants: rare earths that come from outside of China. This mining site hopes to extract one very sought-after type of rare earth: neodymium. Wait, why is neodymium such a big deal to the world? Well,
I expect better, faster, and greener gadgets every year. I mean, that's just how the world works, right? But then, recent geopolitical tensions could threaten all of that. A brutal competition for resources that broke out between the US and China, and to some extent, Russia and Europe as well.
not over oil, not gold, but for something countries call critical metals. Critical because they are essential for high-tech applications, yet their supply chains can be prone to disruption. Rare earths are on that list. So to understand how this battle for critical metals is heating up, I have to venture out of my neighborhood. I reveal how our lust for tech have already caused harm for some. And could create fortunes for others.
Trong cái bùn đỏ đấy nó có một phần nhỏ, lượng rất nhỏ gali.
How will the scramble for metals change the lives of many, including yours?
We're going to need 7 times more than we currently use.
Can we even get there?
This is Veena Sahajwala, a material scientist who's been looking into extracting precious metals from our e-waste, including rare earths.
I brought an old computing tower, just like you asked me to. But firstly, I want to know, what exactly are rare earths?
Well, you know what? You've probably seen them before on the periodic table. You can see these whole series of total 17 elements. This is what we refer to as rare earth elements.
This includes 15 in this row at the bottom, plus 2 more in the middle of the table.
Why are these 17 elements grouped together?
These elements have very similar chemical properties, so behave similarly. And that's why they're all grouped together as rare earth elements.
So can you show me what some of these properties look like?
I do have the solution here that contains rare earths. What we're looking at here now, it's kind of that really light pink color.
But after we move to a room with more ultraviolet light,
So have a look at the solution now. Hold it up against the light and you can see, of course.
It's like a green and yellow color now.
Very different to what we had before. It's very responsive to the light that it's exposed to.
the unique ways rare earths react to light is one of the properties that makes them so valuable. Let me show you. Rare earths may be the reason you can see these vivid colors right now. They allow your screens to express these fiery reds, oceanic blues, and lush greens. But while their color-expressing quality is fascinating, it's really their magnetic properties that is making the world scramble for it.
Oh, Veena, this is the computer tower that I brought in, but what are we going to do with it?
Dismantle it.
All right.
So that's a hard drive. You want to get that out. You think about the complexity in this device and think about the work that it does, right? So many different kinds of components that are there, the reader and the platens.
Where's the magnet here?
Well, the magnet's actually inside in there.
So there's a magnet underneath here? Is that...
That's right.
Yeah, let's get that out.
And
Right. So this is what it looks like.
that's it. The magnet is driving the motors. In this particular instance, you've got, of course, the reader that's being driven by that magnet.
You may be more familiar with magnets that keep stuff together, but magnets are also essential to electric motors. These motors make use of the attraction and repulsion of two magnets to create continuous motion.
So I know that magnets are made out of iron, but these magnets have extra rare earths added to them?
Here we're talking about 25 to 30% of neodymium that's been added to iron. Powerful magnets that you really can't expect to get out of just using plain old iron. To show you how powerful they are,
Yeah.
I've got some of these that I had separated out before.
A magnet with neodymium added to it is at least 10 times stronger than one made of just iron.
Why do we need the magnets in our electronics to be so powerful?
When you make a magnet really powerful, you can actually afford to make it really compact. So think of your iPhone, think of how compact it is. And all those neodymium-based magnets that you want to use in there, they've got to be super powerful.
This is why Venus Lab collects a wide range of portable electronic devices, from your old smartphones to portable hard disks. There may be less than a gram of neodymium in each device, but with the sheer amount of e-waste generated every year, that's a lot of neodymium to be recovered.
Okay, well, I haven't seen Nokia like this in years. I had one just like this when I was at school, actually. This looks like the first iPhone that ever came out. So if companies can afford to use rare earths in everyday items, I mean, are rare earths actually that rare?
Well, actually, no. You know, they are commonly found on the Earth's crust. So, ironically, they're not that rare after all. What makes it so rare is the complexity of actually extracting them.
Neodymium is actually not much rarer in the Earth's crust than something like nickel, which are used to mint your regular old coins. Mining for both metals even starts off similarly. The metal you want is trapped in a certain mineral, so you have to crush that rock down into fine powder to get the mineral out. This is where it gets tricky for neodymium. You want to isolate just neodymium from the mineral, but it's chemically very similar to 16 other rare earth elements. So you won't just find the one you want in the mineral, but often all 17 of them. This makes rare earths much harder to process.
So where are rare earths mined around the world?
You have in total, I believe, around 3,200 occurrences of rare earths around the world.
That's Thomas Krummer speaking, who is the author behind the Rare Earth Observer, described as a newsletter on all things rare earth, with over 1,000 subscribers.
The question is simply if it is commercially viable to extract that. And that, of course, limits it to the, say, high rare earth content deposits such as Bayan Obo in China, Mountain Pass in the United States, Mount Weld in Australia, Steenkramskral in South Africa. These are deposits which have a high commercial viability.
There are rare earth projects spread across the world. Yet, if you look at numbers for global rare earth production, China stands out at 70% of the pie as of 2022, while the US, who once was the top producer of rare earths back in the 1960s, now makes up only 14%.
So then, how did China come to monopolize the industry?
There are two sides of the story to it. One side is that the West says China purposefully dumped foreign rare earth companies out of the business with low prices and thereby conquered the whole market. The other side is the Chinese side. The story is that they think they have been abused by the West. They have been exploited for producing difficult to produce products with a high environmental impact, and the West is paying very low prices for that. The main ores for rare earths has a certain content of radioactive materials such as thorium and uranium. And this needs to be properly processed. The Mountain Pass deposit in California had trouble when they were closed for radioactive leakage.
First reported in 1997, the wastewater leakage contaminated protected desert land as well as water sources, leading to the mine's suspension in 2002. Despite the environmental risk, the Mountain Pass mine is currently open again. And that's because of recent tensions between China and the West. Several countries have become concerned that China might threaten to withhold the supply of rare earths and are looking for an alternative. But here's the twist. As of 2023, Mountain Pass's rare earth raw materials still have to be exported to China for processing before they can be used in the manufacturing of magnets. I head to China to find out why the country still has such a grip on the supply chain. China dominates the supply chain for rare earths, making up 70% of rare earth ore extraction. But the West has been ramping up their own production as well. I want to know how close or far off the West is at coming up with an alternative supply chain. Marina Yue Zhang writes about the Chinese innovation machine, especially in technology.
Marina, so I hear that you're the go-to person for anything China related. Now, I want to know, is it really possible for the West to survive without China when it comes to rare earths?
To be honest, there are enough deposits in the world that can supply rare earths. But I'll quote Elon Musk. He once said, whoever controls the deposits or the mines of those rare earths actually are not important. The critical point is who controls the processing technologies.
Right.
Apparently China has. Even now, United States actually has its own rare earth metals and access to mines, but they have to export most of those products to China for the final processing, high value added processing. China is the only country in the world that has developed capacity to cover the entire value chain of 17 rare earth elements. China has developed advantages in not just technology, but also waste management. Another advantage is China has the largest manpower in rare earths. I think this is the number a few years ago. If there are only 100 PhDs in rare earths, guess how many the West has?
I don't know, I'm guessing a small amount.
The number at the time was 0.
Wow, okay.
But in the past couple of years, in several research institutes related to rare earth processing, China has employed educated engineers of thousands. So no other country can compete with China on that front.
Wow, that's huge. So we really do need China.
China didn't develop these advantages by chance. China experienced through trial and error, experiments, innovation in the past 50 years.
To explain why China has such dominance over the rare earth supply chain, I've prepared an analogy for you. Ni hao. Hi, so what types of pork do you have?
Rare earths that are mined out of the ground still need to be processed to isolate the rare earth you need. Rare earth concentrates, the typical end product to come out of mining sites, still contain a mixture of up to 17 types of rare earths. The rare earth you need, for example, neodymium, needs to be separated out first before you can use it in manufacturing. But all 17 of them are quite similar to one another. Kind of like how I struggle to see the different cuts of meat on display here. But this guy, he's got no problems.
这个头骨，这个龙骨，这个上骨，这个猪手，这个尾巴，这个上骨底，这个不见天，这个后腿，这个没柳头，黄刀肉、里脊肉、小里脊。
So, how many parts of the pork do you have?
一头猪正常不下于不低于十几个部位都有了。
I don't know how you can see more than 10 because from what I can see only about 3. Like, there's the meaty ones here, fatty ones, and then, well, that's definitely the bone.
这个就是专业的问题了，专业跟业余的问题了。
Many mining sites choose to send their rare earth concentrates to China to separate out rare earths that are in demand, such as neodymium. Why? First, China already has the facilities that can do it at scale. Plus, they can do it much more cheaply than any other country can. Second, this process of separation is labor intensive, and it's dirty work that could produce environmental and human harm. China's already got decades of experience in running these operations safely. This means if the West wants to set up a processing plant to do separation on their own soil, they'll need to pour time, money, and effort into all that infrastructure and safety measures. China's domination over the rare earth supply chain doesn't just stop at processing. It extends downstream to the manufacturing of magnets containing rare earths as well. Several estimates say Chinese factories now make more than 80% or even over 90% of high-strength rare earth magnets used in the world. This is Yoki Shi, more popularly known as Miss Mag on Douyin, China's version of TikTok. She's an insider of the Chinese rare earths industry and has worked closely with partners along the entire supply chain from mine to magnet. After writing into her, she has offered me the rare chance of seeing exactly how neodymium is made into magnets that end up in my pocket. In my iPhone, of course. Dongguan Magnet specializes in producing tiny magnets suitable for speakers, microphones, and other small components that fit into portable electronics, such as mobile phones or earbuds.
那这个车间呢，就是磁铁的第一道生产工序，这里面全部是原材料。这个呢就叫做纯铁，它大概占到60%到70%的一个比例。那这个材料呢是铝铁硼的第二种元素，那它叫做硼铁。 就是这一种，它在里面大概占到1%的比例。虽然硼铁和纯铁在里面的重量占比很高，但是它在里面的价值比是不高的，只占到30%到40%。在整个原材料里面，最贵的还是这个元素，那就是叫做砵铝，稀土的砵铝 （PrNd）。 其实很多人对它都有一种误解，很多人以为我们的瓷材工厂用的都是稀土，是土一样的东西，但实际我们用的是这种金属状的，它是要炼成金属我们才能用的。
Wow, so this is what rare earths look like in its metallic form. This is the first time I've seen it in a metallic form.
Okay, it may look like a big chunk of dirt rather than a block of shiny metal, but I can feel it's heavy and cold to the touch. It's just that the surface has tarnished in contact with air, as some metals do.
所以只有把铝、铁、硼3种重要的元素合成在一起的时候，它才能够产生一个非常巨大的磁性。这个磁性就是被我们很多人称之为叫做磁王，它是世界上目前为止已知的磁性最强的材料。配好料之后呢，我们要放在烧结车间里面去把它做成毛坯。 第二步就是去进行机加工，把它切成各种各样的形状，用罗拉线慢慢的去割它。那最终呢，这些产品还会放到成品检验车间里面。这个车间里面，他们在检查外观。那这些产品呢，就是还没有冲磁的磁铁。磁铁在没有冲磁之前是没有磁性的。我要让你看到怎么样能够把没有磁的东西变成有磁性，你想不想体验一下？
Let's do this.
你看，现在这个是没有磁性的啊，我们需要把它放在这个里面，把它盖起来。对，我们用这台机器进行冲磁，放在正中间，对，然后2只手同时按这2个按钮 ，Let's go。我们要等一下啊 ，OK， 然后可以把它拿出来，对，然后放在这个里面，对，把它打开，你看，它就是全部已经冲好磁了。
Right. So just in case you missed it, earlier on these were just little bits of metal, but after putting it in this machine, now it's all magnetized.
Just like that, this factory can churn out over 1,000 tons of rare earth magnets a year in a huge variety of bespoke shapes, which are then transported downstream to manufacturers. Because of the ready supply of such components, many electronic makers, be it for foreign or domestic brands, have located their manufacturing plants in Guangdong province. So what actually leaves China is probably a mobile phone or a pair of earbuds you pick up at your store that's made in China.
在这个小镇上面啊，在方圆10公里范围内有很多家磁铁厂，你几乎可以找到每一个环节的好多家工厂。
Is this the only town of its kind in China?
啊，你可能很意外，这个磁材小镇呢，只是中国大量的产业集群中最小的一个单元。中国除了有磁材小镇，还有磁材城市，比方说北方的包头，现在叫做磁都。我想带你去这个磁材小镇呢，是因为这里面生产了大量你在生活当中看到的磁。这个叫做显磁片，它只对磁场会产生感应。
This plate acts like an X-ray vision to reveal every magnet that sits inside my smartphone.
你看，这个方形的地方是摄像头，它里面是 VCM 的一个电机，就是捕捉人脸的调焦镜头用的。
So the cameras as well.
是的，是的。然后这边这个看起来圆圆的，这个是 MagSafe，就是给它充电固定位置用的。那再往下，哎，这个里面是它的喇叭。
Depending on your smartphone model, you can have 2 to 5 magnets per speaker. The autofocus on your camera, 2 to 4 magnets. Adding up the magnets for your microphone, the vibration motor, your phone could have up to 14 magnets.
Are most of the magnets produced by China used in electronics?
哇，你可能很惊讶，其实电子产品在整个磁材应用里面还不足10%。
I thought the electronics industry is quite big. Where does the other 90% go?
其他的应用里面最重要的就是在汽车这个部分就已经占到了40%以上了。那第二用量的话，就是比方说在节能的家电里面，然后还有一些节能的电梯、电梯液引机，还有包括风力发电，这些都是非常大的用量。比方说汽车，一台新能源汽车所有的用量加起来差不多要在5公斤左右，电梯啊有10几公斤、20几公斤的数量。那像风力发电的电机，那一台电机都要上吨的需求量，就是但凡需要动的地方，有马达的地方，它都需要永磁。而且稀土永磁的话，它可以让整个电机的效能、节能、节电，所以这个用量还在每年的快速增长。
Could you give me a sense of how fast that growth is?
我们行业大概每年以10%到20%的需求在增长。
I can see why China will need a lot more rare earths for manufacturing, probably more than what China can extract from its own mines.
By looking at the traffic on the road, if I see a green number plate, that means it's an electric vehicle. And there are heaps of them. Like, look at that, even that bus is electric. How cool is that?
Automobiles, such as electric vehicles, use up the lion's share of the global supply for rare earth permanent magnets, at 40%. But the growth of EVs is not the only reason that China and the world need to ramp up production of rare earths that are needed for the magnets. It may not even be growing nearly as aggressively as another sector, China.
Wow, what do we have here?
这是一个海上风机的叶片的一部分。目前我们用的海上风机的叶片一般都很大，长度差不多有120米。这里只是取了其中叶片的一小部分。
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
What would the size of the magnet be for a wind turbine as big as that?
它的整个的直径啊，差不多有5米左右，是个非常庞大的一个永磁体啊。对于一个10兆瓦的海上风机来讲，需要的永磁体差不多有8吨。
Why do you think the wind power sector is the fastest growing consumer of rare earths in China?
我们现在新能源是一个发展的主流方向。目前通俗来讲的新能源有2种，一种就是光伏、太阳能发电，还有一种就是风力发电。风力发电跟光伏有一点不一样，就是风力发电呢，它呢可以规模化的建设。简单来讲，目前我们这种大型的风机啊，一台风机它的发电能量啊，差不多相当于100亩光伏发电的这个容量。那想一想，但我同时如果要找1万亩的土地建上光伏的话，在中国的很多地方非常的困难。中国它的人口集聚主要在东部沿海，东部沿海的土地资源非常紧张，所以我们主要是发展风力发电，核心呢又是发展海上的风力发电。
Why is it so important for China to be able to reach net zero?
中国的能耗啊，应该在过去几年来，在全世界都排在前面的，数一数二的。我们可以想象到，中国2060年达到碳中和的情况下，其实对全世界环境碳排放都是一个巨大的贡献。
And is China on track to achieve these goals?
中国过去5年建成的海上风电已经占到了全世界的50%，是欧洲国家过去20多年来建设量的总和。
Okay, so this might come across as a little ignorant, but China's not the first country that comes to mind when I think of going green. In fact, I still had this impression of China as this smog-filled, polluted place. But now I realize that China recognizes the scale and speed it needs to get to even try and get to net zero. And all of that infrastructure is going to require a lot more resources, including rare earths.
In order for entire cities to make the green transition, it means building vast infrastructure for generating renewable energy. Exactly how much more rare earths will the world need to do that? I take a drive down to Canberra, where Geoscience Australia is located. Geoscience Australia is an agency of the Australian government to carry out geographic and geological research on the country.
Alison, what is this place?
So Kartik, I've brought you down here to Geoscience Australia's repository. You can think of it as the national archive of many of our mineral rock samples from all around the country.
I know that rare earths are needed for electronics, high-tech gadgets, and my iPhones specifically, but now we need it for a greener future.
They're the absolute vital component in permanent magnets to drive the turbine of a windmill or the engine in your electric vehicle.
Wow.
So we will not transition without a really good supply of rare earths.
Right, and how much do we need?
Well, some of the estimates are saying that we're going to need 7 times more than we currently use, which is quite an extraordinary amount of growth in this sector.
What type of efforts do we need to put in to get there, and can we even get there?
The industry is dominated by China, but there is so much potential for other countries to also be putting in additional supply into global supply chains for these materials.
Okay, we've got some rocks here. So
We have some rocks here.
are these rocks what's inside all these boxes?
The boxes have rocks like this. They also have drill core and mineral samples. Australia has a real opportunity to bring on some of that extra supply that the world is going to need to ensure that we do have the materials that we need for that transition to net zero. because we have the most extraordinary geological endowment. We have all these different types of rare earth deposits.
Does Australia have what it takes to be a reliable and abundant supply of rare earths to the world?
I think it can happen in Australia because we have a world-class mining industry. We have an incredibly supportive government, and we can do it in a way that will be environmentally
Friendly?
No, that's too strong. All human activities are unfriendly.
Oh, okay.
You want to be able to mine in a way that's not going to destroy the planet that you're trying to save by transitioning to net zero. And in Australia, we take our environmental responsibilities very seriously when it comes to mining.
I'm headed now to one of these rare earth mining projects that have come up in Australia. Yeah, I know. Flying by private jet is not the most eco-friendly way of getting there, but the mine is in the middle of nowhere. 900 kilometers from Perth. That's longer than the length of peninsular Malaysia.
I mean, I can see some stuff's been built here, and I'm guessing more construction's going to happen soon.
So we've completed the airstrip, we've completed the village, and we've completed all the access roads. This is the main plant area.
First discovered in 2014, this mine is touted to have the potential to provide up to 8% of the world's current demand for rare earths used in magnets, neodymium and its closest cousin, praseodymium. China now supplies a little over 60% of the world's demand for these rare earth metals. The Yangibana project is owned by a relatively small mining company called Hastings Technology Metals. It aims to start mining operations by late 2024.
We've just done a rough clear, but this all has to be a flat pad so that we can build all the infrastructure in here. So this area where the plant will be is approximately 300,000 square meters. That's 42 football fields.
Wow.
We know that rare earths are quite difficult to extract from the ground, and this plant will be the first step in separating out minerals that contain rare earths from the junk that isn't useful. So the mining site needs talents like Narelle. She was part of a team that developed the on-site processing for the mine.
So here at Yangibana, we will be doing drill and blast in order to get it out of the ground. Our ore body is ironstone ore, and this is an example of it. So it's an ironstone rock. There are probably 15 different minerals in this rock. Only one of those minerals, monazite, contains the rare earths. So we're trying to extract that mineral and throw away the rest. So the rare earths that we're looking for are neodymium and praseodymium, and they occur in that monazite mineral. So we reject about 95% of the rock that we put into the process. We reject as waste that doesn't bear any rare earths in it, and we're able to extract that small amount into a concentrate.
What leaves the mining site is a rare earth concentrate that still contains a mix of different rare earths. It will then be sent to another processing facility that will separate out the rare earths we really want, like neodymium.
This is what I learned from my first day on the mine site. Here's a rock that I took from the mine site, which weighs about 1 kilo. And what leaves the mine site is this, rare earth concentrate.
Narelle told me I would probably get a mere 40 grams of rare earth concentrate from 1 kilogram of rock.
But from this to get to this, there needs to be some processing done. And as you can see, the mass here is quite small, and the rest is waste.
Waste that under Australian regulations has to be managed properly. Over 90% of the rock that is dug out from the Yangibana mine site does not contain rare earths and needs to be dealt with. All that waste can be toxic. Not managing the waste carefully could have disastrous consequences on the environment and human health.
Already? Okay, sure.
But the Yangibana project has this guy to keep a close watch, to make sure none of that happens.
So Kenneth, you're from Singapore. What brings you out here in Western Australia?
No, I'm very passionate about being pretty much on the front lines of environmental work. Things that I care about are expressed in the work that I do every day.
Kenneth is an environmental science graduate. His job is to monitor the environment, to make sure that the mining project complies with Australia's strict regulations.
So in any mining project, you also produce stuff that you don't want. All that leftover stuff has got to go somewhere. Instead of putting it in a waterway or just on a random pool or lake underground, there are structures called tailings storage facilities that are engineered and designed to contain these tailings over not just the life of the mine, but indefinitely into the future.
Tailings is the fancy mining word for all the waste that comes out of processing ore.
So one of the things that I do to make sure that tailings are not leaching into the environment is I monitor bores. Bores are like holes dug into the ground so that we can sample groundwater that's sitting there. If there's a potential leach, we would know, and that would trigger a whole series of management actions to address that issue. And on top of that, we are also monitoring things for like ambient dust. Down here we have a dust stand. So this measures basically ambient dust levels that are deposited throughout the site. Let's pull this out and have a look.
Oh, okay.
So we've got a bit in there, if you want to have a look there.
Right. Oh, okay.
So every quarter we are replacing these bottles and sending whatever we've collected to the lab. The lab analyzes this for anything from radionuclides to carbon levels. And we want to figure out if we're causing an increase in dust levels at all through the project. If you were wondering why is it so important to track dust, dust basically covers your leaves and it stops photosynthesis.
I mean, some of these shrubs, they just look dead.
Well, most of the plants you see here are actually still alive. And they are seasonally expected to look like that, but come springtime, come a bit of rainfall, they burst into life. It's unreal. These acacias, all yellow, that Eremophilus, pretty much purple. I've got some photos of them.
Come back in the right season, and I could be looking at this instead of barren land. Part of Kenneth's job is to make sure it stays that way.
Every mine site in Western Australia, you're only allowed to mine if you can prove that you can close the mine properly, and this involves full rehabilitation of the site to its previous land use.
This is why even though mining hasn't even started at Yangibana yet, Kenneth has been out here for 4 years, taking comprehensive baseline measurements of the environment, so they know what condition the land was returned to at the end of the mine's lifetime.
So we're going to go to Fraser's bore, which is just around the corner here. And this is not one of our monitoring bores, this is actually a pastoral bore.
Kev, I see some cattle over there.
Oh yes, the mine sits on a working cattle station, so that means it's a free-range farm. All these cattle will at some point be mustered, which is, gathered with helicopters and little buggies, and all the good stuff gets trucked off just like any other meat. Some of it might end up on your plates in Singapore. So what you see here is what you would call a pastoral bore. The owners of this pastoral land use this bore to extract water for their cattle. That water goes from here, if you follow that pipeline, it goes into a trough over there, and the cattle drink from the trough. The troughs pretty much keep them alive. So what we're doing here is to dip the groundwater levels. We want to see if the water abstraction on our site has affected the baseline water levels in that aquifer over there. So this is a dipper. We use this to measure groundwater levels. This probe is a conductivity probe. When the circuit is closed, it makes a beep, so it sounds like this. So that's what happens when it hits the water. Okay, so that goes right in there. We want to make sure there's no entanglement. And we just want to guide it down very gently until we hear a beep.
Oh wow, that's a far way. Oh, there we go.
So that's a beep. So 9.93 meters to the groundwater level.
Wow.
So we compare these levels to historical measurements. We have to dip these at least once a month.
Okay.
And if we have any variation from natural baseline levels by more than 1 meter higher or lower, then that triggers a management action.
Right.
That triggers investigations into how much we're abstracting, and we go from there. Any water that we pull out of the ground is considered abstraction. So we run that water through our process plant for our construction, on any sort of maintenance work that we do.
So are these measurements okay?
Well, yeah, it falls into the ballpark of what you expect for this time of the year.
All right, so no investigation today?
No,
right.
not today.
So not only do you have to take care of things on the mine site, you have to also take care of this kettle station bore.
A big part of running a sustainable operation is also ensuring that the communities around us are not affected negatively by our operation. Grab a bucket first.
This looks like we're going on a picnic, but okay. Sampling, here we go. Wow, I did not expect to see this so close to a mine site.
This is one of the many permanent pools that we have along the Lions River. So in summer, when there's less rainfall, the river tends to dry up, leaving a few permanent pools around. We have to monitor this.
Wow.
Today we're checking for sediments.
So what are some of the things that could go wrong, but you're making sure that doesn't happen?
One example would be having excess sediment come into our waterways. So what happens when we do earth moving is that we disturb the ground, and in a rainfall event, this stuff gets washed through the waterways. And where we're sitting now is exactly downstream of where the processing facility is going to be. And with sediments in the waterways, you have increased nutrient levels, which might cause algal blooms and local animals and fish to die out because of those impacts.
So because mining has quite a big impact on the environment, is there an acceptable threshold?
So for this spot, as you can see, we're in quite a special environment here. So absolutely not.
Wow, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So nothing can change. I mean, how would you achieve that?
It is a challenge. It's exactly why we have systems and processes to manage our environmental impact. That's also another reason why mining projects, especially in Australia, take so much time and money to get off the ground.
The rare earth deposits in Yangibana were first confirmed in 2014. So it's been almost 10 years of costly prep work before mining can commence in late 2024.
Today, we are really going to be the next rare earth producer coming out of Australia. To bring it to this stage where we are
Charles Liu is the executive chairman of Hastings Technology Metals, who has overseen this Yangibana project from the very beginning. I speak to him to find out why it's so important to have an Australian source of rare earth minerals, despite the costly overheads.
China doesn't want to sell you raw materials anymore. They rather sell you a finished product. China wants to sell you a BYD electric vehicle, or they want to sell you a Huawei phone. And that's where the Made in China 2025 policy is about. They don't export rare earth minerals, rare earth raw materials. They feed it downstream into their own domestic supply chain to manufacture a magnet. Historically, they exported it because magnet manufacturers were in different parts of the world, Europe and US. But over the years, because of China's very competitive cost structure and able to price a finished product like a magnet or like a smartphone cheaper than anybody else in the world, there was no need to export raw materials anymore. So China today may not be known to many of your viewers, actually imports rare earth as well. They import the rare earth concentrate.
In fact, China is now the biggest importer of rare earths, specifically in its raw material form.
So how else has the rare earth industry evolved in China?
China has sharpened up its act. China has tightened up the regulations. There are a lot of money being spent by rare earth producers to observe environmental practices and being more compliant with health and safety.
But with demand ever rising, mines are popping up in places where the regulation regime isn't as rigorous, if they even exist at all.
This illegal mining area is equivalent to the size of Singapore.
Singapore, that's massive.
Illegal Myanmar rare earths are really cheap for China.
If Malaysia mines the huge reserve of rare earth material and leaves Malaysia unlivable, it will not be a good decision.